Hello. Thanks for joining me again. So I will give a little context for my conversation here with Andrew Taggart. But before that, I just want to let you know that there's Circling Institute, my company. We're doing all of our courses online right now. So please feel free to join us. The link's below. If you want to get the information about the drop-in events, like the 3-hour drop-in events that we do every Thursday online, you can do that through the Facebook link, and I think that's below. If you're interested in discussing working with me one-on-one, my email's below. Just email me. I'm a little bit slow with email. Something about the coronavirus and communications is really strange. You'd think I've never been able to manage that. But anyways, email me and I will get back with you. And I think that's it. So Andrew Taggart, a delightful conversation. As he said in the email afterwards, a real purity to the conversation. I really felt that. Andrew is, my understanding, because we didn't get much into the content of his life, but rather I would say we discovered what we both lived in a felt way. And I walked away feeling as though I could feel like a chant going through my body, almost like an implicit sense of openness, being, a fullness. It was really great, and a great example, I think, of dialogos with a explicitly mystical element to it. And I really enjoyed talking with him about that, and also his work. A lot of his work that he's been working on has to do with something called total work, and he's a philosopher, and so he has been doing on his blogs, and I'll put all the links and stuff below, on his blogs. He's been working out a lot of his thinking around, you could say, our relationship to work, but from a very deep level. And even it's such a level that the mistakes of understanding what he's talking about reveals the thing that he's talking about, right? That level. So, yeah, I hope you enjoy it, and have a great weekend. Thank you. Welcome. So for everyone who just came on, we just, it's morning time. As you can see the light coming in. I may have to move at a certain point because I normally don't talk this early, but
I can hear the bird song too.
Yeah, so far we've just covered everything from the Midwest to Gregorian chants to acoustical sound to enculturation, and how chanting kind of becomes itself as a kind of enculturation. And then we were just talking about something that caught me, that you had just kind of said, I think without thinking about it. You said, "Oh yeah, normally when I'm philosophizing throughout the day," right? Yeah. And I think the thing that struck me is the apparent ordinariness of that, right? And just that you just said it like that, like, oh yeah, just like you normally when I'm sweeping, or I'm.
It is like sweeping. It is like sweeping. Yeah. That's right.
And I have a feeling that statement, just the way that just rolled off without really thinking about it, is a peek into your world, which is, your world has been. So I've listened to your conversations with Johannes, and I listened to one with the monk guy who has the podcast. What's his name again?
Oh, Daniel Thorson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you, in that one, you really went into um, philosophical inquiry and dialogue, and
Yeah.
you really beautifully articulated, I think, what you do. My impression is what you do when you see clients, right? And have philosophical conversations with them. And the way that you unfolded that was so, I could, one, it was so moving to me.
Hmm.
And it was, it I had this experience of, one, relating to it a lot. Um, However, the way that you put it, at the end of you describing philosophical dialogue, I found myself in a very clear, clean, crisp, almost structure, being held by this structure that was very, very pure,
Hmm.
and moving and rich.
Hmm.
So I'm just interested in who this being is over here.
I'm just sweeping, man. I'm just sweeping.
Yeah, I get that. Exactly.
What would you like? Is there something you'd like to know?
Yeah, like, so for example, when you say philosophizing throughout the day,
Mhm.
um, what do you mean? What does that mean to you?
The
Or what is
philosophers.
that?
What is it? It's a very deep, heartfelt inquiry into the nature of wisdom, of what it is to lead a wise life. And there's, I'm almost crying right now. There's a sweetness about it that just can't be subtracted
Mm.
from the inquiry or the investigation.
Mm.
Of course, it happens between me and myself. Some philosophers of antiquity have said that philosophizing is dialoguing with oneself, to be sure. But above all, it happens with other people. And we should really think of it as if it were an art performance, because that's the closest analog I can provide here.
Mm-hmm.
Think of some kind of play in which it's dark, two people don't know each other. Perhaps they can't even see each other. There are only the voices available, only the voices emerging out of the darkness.
Mm-hmm.
All they know is that one person has gently agreed to play the role of someone who's asking one sinuous question, and the other person knows that she has taken on the role of providing one muddled or clear answer, but in any case, an earnest answer. And through this very simple form, what arises is something that is like a third or I want to say the word understanding here, but I don't want to mislead either, because the understanding is deeply felt. It's an understanding that gets at the heart of the matter at the same time that comes from the heart, where the heart mind is a unified faculty of sorts.
The heart mind is a unified faculty. There's a way.
Yes, yes.
I
It's not.
really
We don't. I don't
get
want to
that.
be.
Yeah.
I don't. I hope it's clear that it's not just talking about the nature of truth. That's fine if someone wanted to do that, but it's also not just feeling our way into the dark. There's a unified form of feeling, knowing that arises in and through the form, and that shows that there is gravitas. What in the other conversation I said, it's a matter of existential weight. And then there's a newfound clarity for both of us. It's as if we're seeing. I won't change metaphors. As if we're hearing uh, the same thing, which is on a thing, at the same time together.
Right. Yes.
So I can only, the best way of liking it is it's a bit like it's a mystical form, because the language becomes an instrument,
Yeah.
right, almost like a musical instrument in the service of the perfume of silence, the perfume of knowing silence
Hmm. Hmm.
that's disclosed.
Hmm.
Now, the person afterward, if it's early conversations, might say, "Oh, that was wonderfully conceptually clear," and then there will be notes or something like that, which will make it seem as if it was highly discursive. But over time, it becomes more and more abundantly clear that no, 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 that wasn't quite it. What was it was the perfume of silence or stillness
Hmm.
that revealed it's always already having been here.
Yeah. Yes. It's always already having been here.
Yeah.
I really appreciate well, one, as you're describing it, there's a way where in hearing you and in understanding you, it's almost like what it takes to understand what you're saying is also an instruction. Like my mind has to, or my awareness or discursiveness has to do the thing that you're saying in order to understand what you're saying, where the what you're talking about is what I'm doing in understanding what you're talking about. It's
Yes, it's
instructive,
an invitation to sink into the stillness of being.
an invitation.
Mm-hmm. Language of this sort is an invitation to sink into the stillness of being.
Hmm. Hmm.
Philosophy in its heart is a meditation that entwines two people together, or at least two people together, and reveals to them the that which they had unfortunately hitherto overlooked, but now they see very clearly.
Mm-hmm. The thing that's the note, the thing, you came on and you had just come from listening to Gregorian chants.
Yes, it's already altered my disposition in the opening part of our conversation today.
Yeah, I just get this. I can feel that. I can feel that in the intimacy that feels evoked, because there is something about sound and listening that is very uh, unified with itself, right? Like, and carrying about it, right? So as you're talking about it, I just do. It's. I feel a tone and
Yeah,
a
well, we might as
vocal.
well joke and say, "What's the difference? You and I are chanting right now, right? Both of us are obviously used to using our voices.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to me you can tell from the particular resonant quality of the sound right now, as I add some Johnny Cash or some such to it. you
Mm-hmm.
can you can feel it, that
Mm-hmm.
there's already the conversation we're having right now is already, so to speak, chanting.
Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking about just the way Johannes describes you as a philosopher mystic, and I'm the impression I'm getting is one as I'm getting what he means, right? And I think what he means is this sense where oftentimes when people think of philosophy or they have a philosophical conversation, there's a way in which um, the thing that's talked about is kind of over there, and then people talk about their thoughts about it. But there's a way in which the thing we're talking about, what the sense I get with you is that the very talking about it is evoking something almost that's already there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that in some way, that felt element of it, or that felt resonance of it, is, I don't know if this is the right word, but the point.
Yes, that's right.
The kind of intimacy.
The intimacy is precisely the point.
Yeah.
If you discard the intimacy, then you discard the very heart or spirit of philosophy,
Mm-hmm.
as I understand it.
Right.
So remember, philosophy comes from a very venerable background. I think it's much closer to religion and spirituality than it is to science.
Yeah.
So, and if that's true, namely that it's closer to religion and spirituality, then all of them are, to use your word, so to speak, circling around the ineffable.
Mm-hmm.
Philosophy becomes, contemplative philosophy in particular, the kind that I'm engaged in, is just letting us apprehend, either via negativa, that by kind of slowly getting rid of conceptual or discursive mind, or maybe a positive way. It can use language to exalt or to lift up. But in either case, I'm not saying that every one of them I'm speaking is articulating the matter in this way, but that's unnecessary to do so. It's that he or she gets that something happened, which was not really happening.
Yeah.
Why else come back? Why else keep philosophizing? Yeah.
1 second.
Yeah.
Speaking of philosophizing, I think my wife isn't realizing that she's having her meeting in the kitchen right next door. Hang on 1 second.
Okay, sure, of course. Yeah. It's all one. It's all sweeping.
Oh yes, totally.
Yeah.
You have a family, right?
I have a wife. Yeah.
Yeah. And do you have children?
We do not have children yet. Not yet.
I thought I had this impression you have children, right?
Yeah. Do you have children?
Yeah. I have a 17-year-old son.
Okay.
Yeah. I just get this sense of well, the mystical element, like, well, not even the element. This sense in which you evoked, and there's a way in my own way that I really, 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 really relate to this, right? Like, I think it's
well, it's here right now.
Yeah. What is the here that's right now for you? It's here. For us.
Yes. It's like the what had been in the background in our early years starts to reveal itself as the foreground. It's the moment you realize that there is, and always has been, the ocean upon which you've been floating.
Yeah.
And that's a little bit too separate even. It's not even that you're just floating on the ocean. You're gently submerged in the ocean. But I feel it was a kind of presence. Maybe I should put it a little bit less metaphorically. I always feel that there's a presence. I'll give you an example of a time I really felt it. My wife and I, some years ago, were at a Zen Buddhist monastery in Southern California. It was a very small one, and we went up before the day of practice into the hillsides. And I could just feel that the silence itself was full. And it wasn't anything particular about that place. It's not as though you need to fetishize it and say, here is fullness. It was, right? It was clear that that's where it was. Southern California, obviously. But then there are times that ineffable something, which is not a thing,
Mhm.
is the presence that's here between us, among us, through us, around us, and you can feel it. And the word "feel" is a little bit clumsy here, of course.
Mhm.
So is the word "sense." That's clumsy too. But
Mhm.
any word, any feeling or sense word you try to use to describe it isn't quite accurate.
Mhm.
But for all that, you know it,
Mhm.
and so it, you know, that it's.
Mhm. Mhm.
I guess it's, if we want to be a little intimate, we could say it's love.
Mhm. Yeah.
That would be fine too.
Yeah. And there is something about, it seems like that there's something about the ocean that's really interesting to me. It's always has this sense. I've had this experience every time I meditate, right?
Mm.
Where, like, especially if I'm particularly uncentered or something, right? I'm particularly not in the ocean. But I sit down and I have some sense of like ocean. And I think when I think ocean, right, like at the time that I'm thinking ocean, I'm thinking that I'm actually thinking about the thing that I'm representing in my mind. But
Mm-hmm.
I usually always have this feeling when that background becomes the foreground. There's this recognition, this sense of, oh, I somehow remember when I was thinking about this, I thought I was thinking about this. But no, this in some sense is not the representation of this.
Right.
And there's this quality for me,
Mm.
no matter how much I know that, it's always all like, oh yeah, that's right.
There's a surprise.
Yeah,
Yeah. There's a
yeah,
delicious surprise.
yeah. I'm
It's
just
as if you had, as to speak in Platonic language, it's as if you had forgotten and now are remembering your true home. And oh, it's not slapstick surprise, but oh, here it is again. And again, by again, I mean it hasn't ever left. I just went off on a little journey, and I seem to have forgotten,
right.
or I believe that I'd forgotten, but
Yeah,
it was always already here all along.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And there's a quality of the forgottenness,
Mm-hmm.
right, or the believing of forgottenness. It's not even that explicit. It seems to be part. It's from the forgotten place, the state of forgottenness, right? It's not like I'm thinking about that I'm representing it, but when it comes into the foreground or it reveals non background, its background and foregroundedness, whatever you call that sense of emergence, that sense of abiding, and yes, remembering. There's this quality of, because it doesn't feel like a discovery. It doesn't feel
Mm-hmm.
like something was absent and I've never seen it before, and then boom, it's there. It's not that. It's almost like a
Right.
remembrance.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's right. I may have
Mm-hmm.
forgotten for 35 years, but it was just like it was just a little to
Yeah.
the left.
Yeah. Right.
I've just noticed that sense of it
Mm-hmm.
um, seems to be part of the quality of it. That no matter how much I meditate, no matter how much I have that,
Still fresh.
it's still fresh every time and it's instant. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That seems revealing of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And,
it's a it's a fresh revealing of itself.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and there's also a quality, and this really kind of links to a lot of the conversations that I've been having about conversation, right? And about, what Verveki and I are in kind of constant dialogue about, right? Either on text, right? Or in these conversations, this inquiry about dialogos, right? Of that moment where, in my understanding is there's dialectic, which is in a certain sense, it's like taking propositions and you as almost like logs on a fire, right?
Mm.
Gathering, right? You gather the logs, and then you start into dialectic, where you start to have a dialogue about, in these sense, the propositions. And at a certain point, the dialogue emerges into dialogos, and it catches flame,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it both lights and transcends what's lit, but also reveals the faces of everybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this kinship with the logos. And there's a quality that it has become more apparent to me as of late, that part of the remembrance seems to have a quality of affinity that is also aspirational. Um, and in the word logos, this kind of sense of of in philosophical conversation, an attuning to, a remembrance of, and an aspirational quality of something like the gathering of the logos. And I think I'm just appreciating my experience of you right now and of us right now, given the background of those conversations that I've been, because part of the I think the telos of those conversations is having a sense of one wanting to reawaken that, in the sense of the original sense of philosophy of my understanding was a philosophy as a way of life,
Mm-hmm.
right? That it's not just the propositions, right? But the propositions as in play, and that in the playing of them, in the act or the event of philosophy, if you will, that when one engages in it, one becomes someone who could engage in it, which is a kind of a transformation.
Mm-hmm.
And I really get that, the gravity of that as we're talking. I'm just appreciating it. So it's like, on one level, there's all these conversations I've been having about this, and then having that show up and shine forth in you with all those things is just really, I'm just noticing a lot of things are gathering themselves up, the logos.
Mm-hmm. There's just a shining presence. Everything is. I experience philosophy as it's in somewhat pedestrian terms. Everything is okay, and isn't this wonderful? Isn't this wonderful that we're here philosophizing? Isn't it wonderful right now?
Mm.
And that's not in some kind of cloying or sentimental way. It's just wonderful to ask a question.
Mm-hmm.
It's wonderful for this question to arrive right here. Isn't it just glorious that it's just placed here for us? In that sense, is a true gift. And how wonderful that someone else can not even consider it, but allow the question to be something that uh, steeps. I guess that's not quite the word metaphor, but it kind of not molds, but it kind of we're using transforms. It kind of transforms. The question is taken up, taken in, and the more that someone does this, the more it's not even a doing. The more that it happens, the more it just becomes clear that everything is just really wonderful. And I don't mean to say that we're not in the middle of the coronavirus, to be sure. I'm talking about the kind of metaphysical tenor of philosophizing. I'm not speaking about the political conditions we find ourselves in.
Yeah.
I just mean somehow it becomes clear that everything is really just sweet and wonderful.
Mm.
The sense is always be on the verge of tears, no matter how dark or how light the topic is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Exquisite.
Mm-hmm. the I'm I'm I think sometimes about this a lot about there's conversations about if I'm looking in a mirror, like I can spend about eternity talking about the things reflected in the mirror. Um, Yet the one thing that the mirror can't reflect is the mirror. It is the only thing going on some level, but it's something that can't be reflected. So there, on some level, I feel like when you talk about the okayness, what I feel present is the shining forth of the thing that can't is non-representational, right? But is immanent within all the representations that shines forth. And so no matter what it's reflecting, there is something there. And that there's something like philosophia, right? That is, you could say, is like a somehow points to, right? Points to, but also in a revealing way, right?
Yes. Well, it's all that. Each philosophical question is a koan. Each philosophical question can be answered by the finite or discursive mind, but not well enough. So we ask ourselves, where does the question come from? We don't know. It comes from mystery or whatever. Where does the question come from? We know that's from meditation, but the same is true of philosophy. Where does the question arrive from? What is its substance? What is a substratum of every question? What is it that it's pointing toward? Where does it go? This question. And above all, what is it about a philosophical question that is not just about how are you? It, as Joseph Pieper once put it, each philosophical question invokes God in the world, which is another kind of somewhat metaphorical way of trying to say what you were just saying. Each philosophical question is itself, and of course is not itself. It is itself. It is itself the question: are you afraid of death? That's a philosophical question, and there is a specifiable answer. But that question, "Are you afraid of death?" is calling forth everything. It leaves nothing out. It can't leave anything out. It's that plentiful and glorious, generous. You know?
There's a quality of sense in as I'm listening to you. My sense is the word divine comes to mind, right? And I think I hear it echoing when you talk about essentially philosophy and religion, right, are somehow closer to each other than, say, philosophy and science, right? There's a quality in you. I also felt it when you were talking about the chanting, the Christian mystic chanting,
Yeah.
the divine, the theos, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Um, there's an orientation, right, around that is very, very, I would say, in our particular time right now, if there's an orientation that makes less and less sense to most people, it's that, right? I
Well,
know.
that's fine. That's like just remember Plato. If it makes less and less sense to people, then it might be true.
Yes.
We should admit the upside down quality of philosophy, or
Yeah.
philosophia.
I
Yeah.
felt the smile start from your toes with that one.
Yeah. You gave me a shut up, sure. You gave me a shut up. Outrageous.
And that sense of the divine, right? We can say a word like sacred, something sacred, right? And then if we say that the divine, the divinity shines forth, the sacredness is present.
Mm-hmm.
They feel very, very similar tones, but they're not the same tone.
No.
Does that make sense to you?
I think we've become more okay with the word sacred once in a while in late modernity, but it feels a little bit over there. Whereas the divine, particularly in the way that you're using it right now, is full-mouthed, full-bodied, full-realityed, if you will.
Yeah.
I've been using the word sweetness a lot recently, and perhaps overly much, but the divine has the feeling of sweetness about it for me.
Mm.
Everything's sweet.
Mm. Mm.
The tree is sweet. The bird is sweet. The bird song I can hear that is sweet. The sunshine, the sunlight on your face is sweet. Perhaps even the distant sound of your wife's voice, sweet, or the pitter patter of my wife's footsteps now and again, sweet.
Yeah.
It's all. There's a line from James Joyce's Ulysses, in which Stephen Dedalus is at a school and there are kids playing outside, and someone says, "Well, what's that?" He says, "What's that in the street?" He says, "That's God." He wasn't probably being heretical at that time, but and I'm not saying I was being a pantheist. I'm not taking a view at all right now. I'm just talking about my experience. I'm not taking a view about monism or non-duality at the moment. I'm just saying the experience is that of the sweet divinity of being.
Mm-hmm. Mm. When you say sweetness, and I think of taste, tasting something. There's something similar to hearing sound and taste that have a very similar quality to them, and in their immediacy of bringing so much together at once in its immediacy, because sound has this quality of, it seems to announce distance, right? It's on some level, but as right here, and there's something about taste that, oh yeah, it's almost a little bit, I would imagine it's a little bit reversed, right? But the same thing where it announces immediacy, but totality, like the taste of something, right?
Yes. And if one closes one's eyes, if one just listens, one realizes that the sound of the voice it's always already here right now. There's a vibrant, vibrating, pulsing here-ness. There's nowhere else that the sound is heard. One can put that in Advaita Vedanta's language by saying that the sound is always appearing to the witness at a certain level of understanding.
Mm.
It's always here appearing to the witness.
Mm.
hit a gong. There's no separation between, there is no sound really. There's just the arising hearing appearing to witnessing consciousness. So it fills the sound, therefore, from the proper point of view, it is hearing arising. One can't even speak of it because it sounds as if it could be a representation, but it's not. It's just hearing arising, vibratory hearing arising to witnessing consciousness. And everything is just filled up with it. And the same, if we close our eyes, I think, with taste. It's if we give ourselves over to it, it's immediate. And perhaps even the use of the word sweetness is not meant to be like sugariness. It's meant to say that everything tastes wonderful. And
yet somehow the immediacy is also includes so many horizons, right? In its immediacy, and it's all at once, right?
Yes, all at onceness and immediacy. Yeah.
And then I'm noticing too, what strikes a strong note, and when you say when one thinks of, right, or when one tastes. You could have said when I taste, or but you said one, and it seemed attuned to what you were talking about. What is that? What is that? When you say one taste, one, I think if I were to say my experience of it is where it's something like we could say this one, we could say this one, or we could say this one. There's an intelligibility there that, like, I just noticed.
It's an invitation to anyone.
Yeah.
Now, in some cases, if you're philosophizing and you're a very analytical sort, and you say, one feels right now a little bit sad, or something like, I've heard that many times. That's the kind of dissociation. So that's not hopefully what I meant. I meant when one tastes, I mean, any one of us, but any of us, please taste. Please hear. Please close your eyes.
Yeah, is an intimate,
and it's an intimate one, because one will discover that if one closes one's eyes and listens, that the luminous witness is attuned to the arising hearing, and the falling away of hearing.
Yes,
it's very intimate. There's not a hairbreadth of separation between the hearing and the witnessing, except post facto.
Right. I also like it because I can count. I can definitely count that high.
Yeah. Attested math skills. Yes. You won't be helping your 17-year-old son, therefore, with his math assignments.
Yes. One of the things I've heard you and Jonathan talk about, and in your other conversations too, seems you've given a lot of thought, right, to modernity, and in particular humanism, and it's interesting, and also the work that you've done around, which I've really enjoyed getting. Mostly in the way that it has me think and getting it, right? There's an intimacy in it, or it actually reveals the non-intimacy of the time I'm in, but in that doing it reveals something, which is your work around work, right? About the totalizing, the sense of like not
everything that seems to get in the way of this conversation right now, for most people. That's what I'm after.
Say that.
Total work is just the arguments about total work are everything to do with whatever would get in the way of
This conversation.
people have this conversation right now.
Yeah,
and everything is a gross over exaggeration, but many things that get in the way of this conversation right now.
Yeah.
Of the condition of possibility for conversations like these,
yes.
Of the intelligibility of them, of the ubiquity of them, of the obviousness of this kind of intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm worried about almost everything that gets in the way of what's happening right here and right now.
Mm-hmm. And that, although you correct yourself when you say everything, there's something though that you're also evoking or revealing when you say everything.
Mm-hmm.
Because what I sense and what I've appreciated about when you've talked about it is that it's not in Heidegger language. It's not, you're not talking about the ontic sense of, oh, there's me and then there's something I do called work. I think what you're saying is, no, on a almost like a pre-reflective level, I already always view myself as a worker, right? And therefore constitute a world that occurs to me as working or not working, right? And that it's like a deep organizing structure, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
that isn't something I do. Therefore, like even, it's kind of funny to think about this with the distinction of work-life balance.
Oh no. Oh dear. That old song.
Yes, dear.
That's way off.
And your connection, and in your connection with a lot of the conditions of that, and how that's gotten so deep in our ontological understanding of being, right?
Mm-hmm.
A way that we don't even explicate. So it's like, appreciate like the way that you talk about it. It explicates and brings it in from a background to a foreground. In that sense, right? That's where it's been impactful for me. And listening to you, right, is it's revealing of being, right, in that way. And it's funny, it's revealing in the sense of like the moment I kind of, my dad used to say he's been sober in the AA world for like, I don't know, 35 years or something like that. So he has these really great like bumper sticker phrases he comes up with. But he's like, yeah, I saw the sudden flash of light the moment I popped my head out of my ass.
Your father sounds Chicagoan. Yeah.
Oh shit,
Yeah.
And there's a connection, and I've appreciated you have a very, it seems to give it a lot of thought of that which explicates of the notion of humanism, right? And in a way that I haven't quite heard it described as you've described it before. Yeah, I would just love to hear, and it's interesting to have that as the sense of the conversation that we're in, right? And having that really be present with us. And then you're like, whatever gets in the way of this is what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's so. Consider humanism. The ordinary definition is that man is the measure of all things. I've tried to suggest that a lot of things have withdrawn from, since we're using Heideggerian language, kind of what it is to be in the world. And the two that have withdrawn are theos, or any notion of divinity, of the Gregorian chant, any any notion of higher, that's extraordinarily important for us. It's extraordinarily important that it's withdrawn because it doesn't enable a hierarchy of values.
Yeah.
Any genuine discussions of the good life or eudaimonia become highly subjective in nature. That's the first one. Theos withdraws, and the second, relatedly, is that cosmos withdraws. That there could be an intelligible, beautiful, well-organized order in which all of us find ourselves and to which we all belong has up and vanished. And we don't even, and in both cases, we don't know quite that they both vanished. Yeah. We've already come on the scene too late. The cat burglar already came many decades prior, and we are living we are living on the scene now, not knowing that's the case. So what emerges concomitant with the disappearance of the divine and the cosmos is humanism, the view according to which man is the measure of all things. And I find it hard still to describe this. I find it hard still today, but it really is as if we've walked or been born or been thrown into a world where everything is just drenched in human thoughts and human feelings and human sensations and human concerns and human technologies and human platforms and human endeavors and human projects. And they're all of such central organizing importance that we couldn't possibly get behind them. So I could, a simple example to help out our viewers would be social media. How is it possible for there to be such sweaty interest, kind of sweat-browed interest in social media in many cases? People talk usually at some kind of level about dopamine hits and things like that, but I'm talking about things that are more basic. How does a social media platform ever emerge in the first place and become tantalizing? It's only that I'm vis-a-vis other human beings against which I measure myself and with which I understand myself. This is an entirely new, as I try to say about total work, this is an extraordinarily new experiment that we didn't realize that we're involved in.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with any other culture that has not had different forms of being apart from human beings against which we understood ourselves. For example, you might think about some kind of hierarchy of being or the great chain of being. You have God, angels, who are complete intelligence, human beings, other animals, vegetable life, rocks, and so forth. I'm not subscribing to the great chain of being. I'm just telling you that you have a way of understanding the human as being situated, and as having a proper place, and being in right relation, use that term, with all other beings. Please don't mistake me. I'm not trying to romanticize this one. I'm just saying that the structure is a humbling structure. Yeah. That way. It's an ontologically, as opposed to simply epistemically humbling structure.
Yeah.
It's the condition of possibility for reverence.
Yeah.
And compassion for all sentient beings and so forth.
Yeah.
So in the intimacy we experience in this conversation is only possible on the grounds that we don't think it's just about two human beings here. That's lovely that there are, but our conversation has unfolded these sentient beings within something indescribable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. I'm just thinking into what you just said about, in some way, how I heard what you said anyways, was the absorption into social media and the and the sweating interest
Yeah, yes. Yeah.
exemplifies something that highlights the man is the measure of all things. I just got this sense of like, because there is that quality with social media and technology in general that just brings everything into this,
Mm-hmm.
and particularly uh, without a relationship to that which it's in a relationship with, right? It's like that's part of what it seems to do,
Mm-hmm.
is thus the absorbing quality
Mm-hmm.
is the more you look at it, the more you don't notice that you're looking at it, right?
Mm-hmm.
The more interest, like the sense of withdrawal doesn't, it, it conceals what it's concealed, right? Whereas what
Mm-hmm.
you're talking about with the sense of hierarchy, and how I really liked how you said it, the sense of up, divine,
Mm-hmm.
right? And being situated. And how
Yes.
I heard that is not like as you made sure to to exemplify that you're not talking about something conceptual. You're talking about, it's more like situated in the way a hot stove, when you touch it, situates you, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
Mm-hmm.
there's no, that's not a reflective act that you're proposing. It's, no, in that moment, you're right size to that,
Yeah.
your body,
Yes. Yes.
it
Yes.
situates you, right?
Yes. Yes.
And that there's something about social media that almost kind of levels everything off, right? And yeah, you're right. That sense of being inside of something bigger does not, like, yeah, you're right. It's inframed, right? You become
Mm-hmm.
inframed. Yeah.
There's a lot of talk today about focusing and being focused. I might joke what we really need is to be absolutely unfocused.
Mm.
We need to learn how to relax the focus, to learn how to take our clenched fists off.
Mm.
Because
Yeah.
meditation, Zen Master Dogen says, is peace itself. Meditation is the, the being's breathing itself through
Mm.
this particular vessel.
Mm.
But for that to be so, for that to be tasted as such, there has to be defocusing, de-efforting, unenframing,
Mm.
unclenching.
Mm.
Contemplation in the proper sense is just the actually apprehending luminosity before all of the contractions begin.
Yeah. I'm hearing the play of the, the precision of the word apprehend, right? Versus comprehend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's really telling. There's it's funny, this, the, as I understand this juxtaposition between this hyper concern, right, with focusing, right? So interesting, because I just felt the hijacking of, I
Yeah, yeah.
I that's given by that whole structure, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the sense in which I think I want to focus, but I really got the sense of the I that I call I,
Mm-hmm.
right, isn't the I that apprehends. And I was just, in the night, as you're talking, I had this sense of just this juxtaposition of focusing and then telling that person, now focus on all that is, and then just watching it, right? And it has that sense of like there's that immediate, that right size of
Mm-hmm.
the that that the sense of what I can't see, what I can't smell, what I can't get a hold of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But and I do this,
It's an act of love.
yeah,
That right there you described, that's love.
yeah, yeah,
You're there for someone and you say, just, just be with and abide with everything so far that it has not been focused on.
yeah.
That's an act of love.
So it's really well. I want to kind of stay with that for a second. So I never quite saw it like that. The sense of just if I take that sense of focusing and I just go, okay, now focus on all of it. There's an obviousness that immediately I feel myself within that
Mm-hmm.
like right size.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a way that is what's interesting about that, because I imagine like you have the gamer or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the in the talking to all of his friends. And I've actually worked with families where um, I'll go and how I'll work with them is I'll go and just plant myself in the family for a couple of weeks and work with the family as a families, which is I've learned more about the human condition, I think, in doing that work. Um, but I've really noticed, and I've gotten a view into what it is to be a teenager in many cases now,
Mm-hmm.
is where there were so many kids that I've worked with that they would go to school, right? And they wouldn't talk to any of their friends at school, but they would come home and get on the video game and have this intense relationship with them online, right? And like literally from every in their pre-reflective responses, what was real was that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Was the online world. What was inconsequential and not real, based on their lack of responsiveness to it, was everything outside of that,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I think I just felt this, I just made a connection in what you're talking about of like, when I think about like, okay, let's just tell him to relax. And this is one of the things I've appreciated about your work, right? And I can feel the sensibility in just this conversation, right? Um, is that what I think I experience you evoking in talking about this, right? Is that there's a way in which to understand what you're saying actually is to come into contact, right? Which isn't trying to relax from within the frame, but there's something that just happens when you touch everything that is withdrawn and is with its withdrawnness is withdrawn, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that sense of withdrawn, the only appropriate response is a kind of a relaxation to even get it, right?
Yes. Yes.
That even the relaxation isn't something I'm doing. The
No.
relaxation is just what happens as a human being as they open to all of it.
Relaxation is the understanding in the deepest sense.
Thanks for hanging with me as I was trying to walk through that.
Yeah.
It's really nice because I've had and it's having me make sense a little bit of this thing that I just started doing spontaneously a couple of years ago when I go on walks,
Uh,
where where I'll I'll walk and I'll just bring my attention to the place in which I can't see anymore. And there's something about walking because there's movement. You can kind of highlight that place. And to watch the process of doing that, right? Because just the act of trying to do that in my periphery as I'm walking, my first instinct is to focus on it. But the moment you focus on it is the moment that you lose the other one, and you lose the other one.
right,
But
right.
as you kind of engage, I've noticed that as I engage with that, there is what it is to focus is exactly what it is to relax, right? There's this very concrete way which kind of gets at that. And I just noticed myself kind of doing
Mm-hmm.
that spontaneously and have had lots of thoughts about like, what am I doing when I focus, right?
Mm-hmm.
What, and it, and then there is a quality of that relaxation every time I would go to effort starts to shift over into like effort is now to focus is to relax.
That's the Taoist insight.
Mm.
Right? That is the understanding. It,
Mm.
step one, see that you're always see that you, whoever the you is here, is always involved in effortful focusing. I'm straining to understand something, I think. It's a hard problem to solve.
Mm-hmm.
I really need to act concertedly
Mm-hmm.
to bring this about, and so forth.
Mm.
I'm a Protestant in terms of my work ethic vis-a-vis everything, it seems. So step one, you start to realize that it shows up in your constrictedness in various ways. Step two, make a distinction. Oh, I finally had an experience. I was walking one day. This is kind of a common one from William James's The Varieties of Religious Experience. You find these people who are really just trying to get somewhere, and then they finally, at wit's end, say, I can't do it. So we might call it surrender or a true letting go. And lo and behold, there's a genuine relaxation. So step two, I actually taste relaxation. But relaxation is a word that we should use appropriately, or it doesn't mean non-energetic or just lying around. As you described, relaxation is full and beautiful and seamless and sinewy, all that. It's smooth. It's like a calligraphic brushstroke from a Zen master. So step two, you realize that. And then, of course, you can get attachments if you start to realize that's very nice. So, the ultimate non-dualist step is like, oh, there's really no difference between focusing in a proper sense and relaxation.
Mm.
Because everything at a deeper level is always already relaxation, stillness, being, silence. Being is already.
But only always.
Yes, yes, that's right. So it's already the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The Tao is already smooth and liquid. I mean, even to call it that is to call it too much, of course. So focusing out of, from the place of, in continuity with relaxation, is itself relaxed. And when there is no focusing, there's just the sinking back into being qua being. It's just exhalations and inhalations in the third step. It's just everything is smooth.
Mm-hmm.
Your wife has a meeting in the other room, and it's fine. You just say, could you be a little quieter? I'm, I'm having a conversation with someone who started talking to me about Gregorian chants at the beginning of the conversation, or whatever. And she gets it because she gets you at this point, I'm sure.
Yeah, totally. So total work
Yes.
is like, it's funny, I felt like kind of just bringing that back in.
Mm-hmm.
Just feel.
Mm-hmm.
Just the
Right.
contrast of that, right?
Yes. Exactly.
Uh-huh. Is precisely, it seems, to be a worker.
Precisely. Precisely.
Yeah. It's almost the opposite. This is where my dyslexia comes in handy. I can just reverse things back and forth a little bit.
Yes. There you are.
But the sense, yeah, it's almost the opposite, the direct opposite of the sense that you're talking about as the always already abiding,
Mm-hmm.
right? Disclosed even in its it's undisclosed, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
already here.
Yes.
And total work has this almost this sense of like, as a worker, there's always more work. And I am through my work. But because I'm a worker, I never get the work done. So there's this, yeah.
I can never be complete.
Yeah.
That is the impossibility. That
Yeah.
is my burden,
Yeah.
no matter how nice my work is.
Yeah. So it's almost like an enactment in a total way
Mm-hmm.
of the forgetfulness of being.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes. It's an ongoing, seemingly unending enactment of the forgetfulness of being.
Yes. Thinking about
And that's why it's so darn hard. I'll use the word hard. That's why it's so darn hard to talk about it in many contexts, because it therefore is always ripe for misinterpretation. The key is not to get the understanding of the critique of total work. That's that's the reenactment. The misinterpretations are part of the process of continuing to stand as the worker.
yeah.
The point is to continue to repudiate the arguments made about total work in order to see that of course it's the case that meaningful work is possible, or if of course it's the case that we have callings or careers, whatever flavor you want, you can always find a way to bend and swerve. And usually you don't even bend and swerve, you just misunderstand, you misinterpret. And that would suggest that's part of what it is to keep oneself taking the stand as the worker.
Mm-hmm.
The worker, just analogous to the ego. Worker, like the ego self, is threatened because you can't take your stand as the worker and understand what's being said.
Mm-hmm.
Just as in philosophy, you feel the perfume of being in and through the philosophizing, and just as in philosophy, the understanding is the relaxation. So, in what I call public philosophy, this critique of total work in particular, you need to actually take a different stand in order to understand what's being said.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm okay with it. I have a sense of humor about it, but it's frightful and horrifying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because you would see that if you read a number of pieces that try to summarize what I'm writing, they're misunderstandings. These are even supposedly sympathetically people. They're misunderstandings of what is being said, unwittingly in order to continue being a total worker in some fashion or another.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yes. It's very sphincter-like.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like I oftentimes think about that sense of like there's certain muscles like prime movers that cross a
Yeah,
joint that when it contracts it does something that
yeah.
then does something else. But then there are these muscles that when they contract the whole thing contracts.
Yes, yes, yes.
And that's what
There's
I'm.
the pre-contraction before the arriving of the so-called arguments about total work.
Yeah.
The sphincter tightens in preparation for
And
the
it
critique.
transcends itself through its instantiation in the
Yeah,
transcendence, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
There's another teacher of mine talked about something. He's similar to my dad, but he talked about something called what he calls the foop bird. And that's how he describes the foop bird. The foop bird, foop is the sound the bird makes as it flies in ever concentric circles. And the moment it flies up its own ass, foop. It's so funny. Everyone knows exactly what you mean when you can hear the sound of the foop bird, like whoop. You can hear it. And there, it's funny as I'm talking about it, there's like it the irony, right, of just the response of humor to it, right? But at the same time, the humor admits the horror of it, right? On another level. And I think that's one of the things I've come to appreciate about Heidegger, right? Is he's, you know, there's a tone of I feel a tone of what, when you talk about this, of a very similar sensibility of my understanding of what he's talking about is the inframing, totalizing of technicity, or inframing of our time. When he says the famous phrase that he says, and the saving power, or within the danger is the saving power. And what I've come to understand, what he's talking about is that the danger, on one level, it's what's happening, right? But the what's happening is the danger is how he says, like, a truly dark time is not people walking around talking about how dark it is. A truly dark time is everyone's walking around and they're not even not noticing it's not dark. And when I get this kind of ontological tickle or something as we talk about total work, of entering into seeing the absurdity, seeing the darkness as the darkness, right? Seeing in it precisely how uncanny this is, of the totalizing effect.
Very uncanny.
Yeah.
Can you believe that we actually live in a society where this is the case? It's almost incomprehensible.
And here's the thing, it's possible to not even comprehend that I'm not comprehending how weird it is and uncanny it is. And that even is, I think, reflected in what you're talking about in the totalizing sense of social media, right? Where we get on our screens. I sometimes like have this thought experiment of like imagining, like I go to sleep, it's 1970, and I go to work every day and I use the BART, let's say, and I wake up and it's 2020, but I don't know it. And I go to BART, same BART station, and I walk in, and all of a sudden, everybody is staring right at this thing that they're holding, like this. And in fact, everybody on the thing is like this. Like
Yes.
occasionally they look around and they're just a little disheveled, and then they're like this. What would I think? It's like I think I would think, whatever that is, it it got us.
That's a funny tale on Rip Van Winkle. It's a nice, you kind of tweaked it, right? It's the Rip Van Winkle tale about falling asleep before the revolution, waking up afterward. But
Yeah,
you fell asleep and things weren't great, but apparently the part was operating. You woke up afterward and
yeah,
you're horrified. And you're right, it got us somehow. It got
right.
us. Yeah.
And what's interesting, what's even more uncanny about that, I would say, and I don't know more, but like part of its uncanniness is that really only happened in the last 10 years or so,
Yes.
right? And that's such a dramatic orientation. And it just happened a fraction of a second ago,
Right.
and it's completely disappeared. That in itself is like, I'm like, spooky.
That's spooky, but at least you have people who can still remember what it was like before cell phones up to a point.
Yeah.
What if you can't remember what it was like before the worker became the ontological stand or stance?
Yeah.
People can't. People.
Literally something I can't be with.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
There is a quality of like touching in it. It's like almost like swallowing metal. Like nothing about me is designed for that. It's almost like
Yeah. Yes.
to get it.
Yes.
Like,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And what's also unfortunate is that there are these symptomal manifestations of it, as in the case of burnout, to take one example, or as in the case of feeling overwhelmed or whatever. But then they're always misrecognized, or almost always misrecognized as a narrow mental health concern. The WHO called burnout an occupational problem or something like this. You have the perpetuation of total work happens. I'm arguing. This has been helpful today to see this, because I'm arguing through this misapprehension, misinterpretation.
yeah.
It's very easy to say we should have a 4-day work week, or we should go with UBI, or we should appeal to labor movement in the 19th century. It's a very good movement in the 19th century that led to better labor conditions for people working in factories. It led to the 40-hour work week, the 5-day work week. I'm sympathetic to that, to be sure, but I'm not talking about that. Any narrowly psychological or sociological interpretation tends to be a misinterpretation. Policy statements always begin from the stance of the worker. Right now, 16.8 million Americans have recently filed for unemployment. And what we're going to do, alas, is double down on making them into more and more jobbers. We're going to re-educate them and make them jobbers again. Now I'm getting on my high horse, but what I'm trying to say is that the jobber is just one instantiation of the worker. And it's one, I think, very suspect and nefarious version. The careerist is another more sophisticated, slightly more sophisticated, ideologically entrapped version of the worker. And the worst version, I think, right now is the one who really goes in for something like a calling, which is a very Protestant Calvinist notion. It says, I have a calling to work. I have a calling to be a creative class person or a knowledge worker.
The I.
Yes.
I have a calling. Part of the calling is I don't notice that the I is completely wedded and given by this total work, and I call it my I.
Yeah, the late Marxist Louis Althusser would talk about how we're called into subjectivation. I haven't thought about this in a while, but you're called forth as the worker, and you don't realize that that was the call that you already heard, and now you've been playing out that role. But it's just so fundamentally untrue to our own direct experience. This is why before we went into the work, I said, I am trying to lift the veil, to change metaphors, on anything that is actually precluding the very possibility of the kind of intimate, beautiful, heartfelt, searching conversation that you and I are having today. I want to put it in that very immediate sense so that there's some tactileness, so that I'm not just saying things that are highfalutin. I want to say it's right here. Right here is what I care about.
Yeah.
It's right here. It's possible. It's actualizing itself right now.
Right. And if the question, let's just say that I or someone really got what you're talking about, like really got it, like really was in the understanding of it. How would they know? Because I'm just really with this, and I notice as we're talking about this, I feel myself becoming more and more and more and more and more spacious.
Yes.
And there's an awareness of this spatialness of, like, if I pull on one of the threads, the whole thing's going to happen. Right.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
think this is what has me ask this question, is because, oh yeah, there's something that you're offering, if you will, in the inquiry that that you're doing. That's a kind of understanding that is distinct from the understanding from within the frame, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess the question is, if the understanding was an understanding that wasn't pulling on the thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
How would one know that one was understanding what's being spoken about?
Yes. The Bible says there is a peace that surpasses all understanding.
Mm-hmm.
That person would know that peace, would know that he or she is peace itself.
Mm.
And that's different from feeling kind of a nice sense of transient peace when the workday is over and before the next workday begins. Or it's not the same as relief or feeling unencumbered for a moment. For phenomenologically speaking, peace itself is our being. It's and it's so clear as to be undeniable. You can't. This is not a Cartesian moment in which you've hard wrung some certainty through a skeptical method. We haven't wrung anything out. It's not as though thank goodness we now have some certainty. Right. No, you know it because it's you. You know it because it's absolutely indubitable. You wouldn't think to doubt it. Mm. How do you know when you're in love with someone for real? Mm-hmm. It's tautological. You just, I just love her. Montaigne said of his late friend he was very, very much in love with, in the sense of brotherly love. Why, he asks in a very Montaignian spirit, why did I love my friend? Because it was he, because it was I. Very beautiful and very true, but completely propositionally nothing. But he's trying to basically describe the indescribable, something he already knows. If I say, why do I love my wife? Because it was she, because it is she, because it is I. And how do we know when we're not in the throes of total work? Because we actually experience peace itself.
Mm.
And when we go, and if you want, it's a little bit like a matrix or some such, when you look out at what people are doing now, it no longer, I'm sure this would take some time as it does with a spiritual practice, but it no longer has its grip on you. You realize that this is, people are seeing life through a glass half darkly. You see it as a language game or a discourse. You're a bit of a Rortian ironist, whichever version you want. But you begin to see it as something that stands over and against you, but is not your abiding peace.
Mm-hmm.
And anytime you find yourself contracting into the worker again, oh, I see.
Mm.
That was the habit. This is,
Mm.
I don't know what kind of contemplative practices you have, but usually there's contractions back into our ordinary forms of identification. But over time, through relaxation,
Mm.
through the depths of understanding,
Mm.
the peace becomes where we abide, how we abide, as we abide.
Mm-hmm. Mm. The abiding.
Yeah.
There's a way in where I would say, if I feel the sense of just being present, there's a quality of, it's almost like as if every point, there's like if everything were made of points, they're all opening at once. Yeah. There's this quad, there's a, there's a, yes, there's a tone through everything. Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome so much. Thank you very much for this conversation.
This is really, really, I really, really enjoyed.
I enjoyed it immensely.
Yeah.
Yeah, really beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah. Received fully. And now, and I think the thing I'm appreciating about it is, well, actually, I'm reading right now with, and maybe we can have you on when we read a dialogue with another, where there's like 3 interlocutors or something. But Chris and I are doing a series where we just read the Platonic dialogues.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I'm it's funny, I've never really read the dialogues. And in reading them, I hearkened on a number of occasions as we've been talking to some of the little experiences that
Yeah.
with Socrates. And there's one of the things I've really appreciated about it so far is there's this way where Socrates is talking to, in the first one that we're reading is Alcibiades, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he he just, Socrates is just taking out every single peg, right? It just, or almost like, it feels like he's lining up dominoes through just utterly not answering the question, but undoing the question. And it's like, it's before, and what's interesting is, as the dialogue is doing its thing, there's this kind of sense in where we're walking around something that is undefined, that in some sense can't be defined, yet is present, right? And in all not being able to answer the questions, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That sense of just circling, this sense of circling around something that, a hollow, if you will, the hollow becomes a presence in some way.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think I just really have
Yes.
been reading
Yeah.
that and in this dialogue and talking about your work and the experience of how one would know if one understood. I'm just, all that's
Hmm.
present for me. So I really
Yes.
appreciate, I
Well,
think
thank
that's
you.
part of what I'm appreciating about the conversation.
Yeah. Oh, I just really appreciated the tone of the conversation.
Mhm.
It felt as though really from the beginning we were able to move into intimacy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just
Yeah.
very, 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 very beautiful.
Mm. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Yes. I'm certain we will do this again.
Yeah, I would love that.
Yeah.
Let me just say something um, fun in
Mhm.
keeping with this conversation before we uh, depart,
Mhm.
and that is that I had no idea that you even wanted to have a conversation today that would be recorded. I just assumed we were chatting.
Mm.
Isn't that interesting?
Mm.
Yeah.
What's interesting about it?
Oh, well, let's say if it were 10 years ago or 15 years ago, that would have been very surprising to me. And there
Mm.
would have been perhaps a dramatic shift from the the, the first part, which is just you and I, to the other part where there's you, I, and whoever it is that will be viewing this.
Mhm.
It's just one of those moments where you, maybe there's a little bit of pride speaking, but you realize your spiritual practice is actually it's actually here.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Oh,
it's, I guess I hope that doesn't sound too prideful. It's just, oh, okay, that's good too. That's fine too. Oh, is that what we're doing? Okay,
yeah.
okay, sure.
Totally.
I
Totally.
guess you could say yes, and your improvisation or whatever else was like, there was no difference.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's really sweet.
Yeah. Mm. It was really sweet. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mm. Nice to meet you, my friend.
Nice to meet you too. Take good care.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye now.